To encourage debate on sustainability in construction, Tata Steel and Poly Creative have collaborated on a series of podcasts. Experts in construction and sustainability talk to people both inside and outside construction to share ideas. They discuss what sustainability means and the future impact of decisions that are made with today's sustainability goals in mind. We welcome any and all constructive feedback on these episodes. At the end of the conversation, we'll give you the website address where you can go and contribute. My name is Sienna, and in this podcast I'll be talking to an expert about some of the things that interest me in climate change. I'm in year 9 and I've learned a lot at school about fossil fuels, climate change, renewable sources and how it's affecting habitats. So today I'll be talking to Barry Rust from Tata Steel.
I work in a part of Tata Steel that makes products for buildings. So we don't build buildings, but we make products that allow other people to put them into buildings. So that's I work in marketing in that, but as part of my job I also look after sustainability in that part of the business. So that's why we're talking.
Cool.
That's me. And you're 12, are you, Sienna?
I'm 13 now, and I'm in year 9. Yeah, and I'm just an ordinary person.
Yep. Well, that's cool, because I'm just an ordinary person as well.
So do you think with climate change, do you think people are actually listening to what you say and things like that? Do you think they're actually taking in what you say and genuinely trying to make a difference or not?
I think there's more and more people. I'm meeting more and more people who understand the problem we've got with climate change and biodiversity issues, and I think there's more and more people who are wanting real action to be taken and wanting to take real action themselves as well. Because a lot of people I talk to, friends of mine or colleagues have got children, some of them have got grandchildren, and they kind of see all of these issues and the problems that we're potentially storing up or giving to our children now or our children's children tomorrow. They see that as a real issue, and so I think that it's, yes, there's changes. People want to make a change, and I think there's a lot of frustration out there, and I think that's kind of what your question's about, isn't it? Is, are people taking this seriously enough? I think more and more people are, but I think people are very frustrated that things aren't happening or don't appear to be happening. And certainly things maybe aren't happening as fast as they should. I think that's definitely true.
Why do you think that we aren't seeing a big difference yet? Why do you think that's happening?
Well, I think people and maybe businesses, they know that change needs to happen, but I think sometimes they're not quite sure what change needs to happen or what they need to do. And so that becomes an issue that slows people down. I think some people are hoping that governments will bring laws which make changes and that will help things. Then they maybe have to think about things less and just need to follow the law maybe. So, but I do think it's a really complicated subject matter. I mean, you've probably learned stuff at school and I'm learning stuff all the time. And it's a really complicated subject matter and a complicated area, sustainability, and knowing what to do and knowing to do the right things. But I think probably the most important thing is because many of us are not sure what to do, is probably we need to, talk to people, understand, talk to experts, be people like you and I to have conversations about it and to learn more together. I think that's really important.
Do you think that the small changes, the really small changes like reusing plastic bags and things, do you think they will eventually make a difference for everyone? Because I do some things like reuse plastic bags, use metal water bottles rather than just using unnecessary amounts of one-use plastic. Do you think that will be important in the future?
I think it's important now. I really do. There's for me, there's kind of 3 main areas where things need to change. I think there's people like you and I need to do stuff. I think there's businesses that need to do stuff. And then I think there's governments that need to do stuff. But I don't think it's one or the other. I think we all need to be doing it. We all need to make that difference. So we were talking about it the other day to my daughter. My daughter was talking about becoming vegetarian, and she said, but it won't make much difference because I'm only one vegetarian. And we kind of said, yes, but if everybody became vegetarian in the country, then we'd have 60 million vegetarians. So we said to her, I think she said something like it would be a drop in the ocean. And we said, yeah, but the ocean's only made up of drops. So if you have enough drops, you've got an ocean. So I think that's really true. We all need to do stuff, even the little stuff, because if everybody in the UK and everybody in Europe did that, it could make a real difference. So things like single-use plastics, having metal water bottles. Yeah, I think that's, each of us need to do that. And then I think businesses have more opportunity to do bigger things kind of singly, because those businesses tend to be much bigger than the individual. So businesses have got a real opportunity to do more stuff. But even businesses are only made up of people, aren't they? People like me and my colleagues run businesses, but sometimes, businesses don't know what to do or aren't sure what to do either. So businesses need to learn. So this change that we all need to be making today and for tomorrow, there's a lot of learning to do, because there's not many sustainability experts out there, and we really, it's changing the whole world. It's changing everything we do. So that's really different to anything we've done in the past. So I think, we all need to learn. Governments need to learn as well, by the way. They need to learn as well. So little things will make a difference if we all do little things. So you telling your friends that this is what I'm doing, and you influence them telling you what they're doing and them influencing you. So before you know it, we're all doing things more sensibly, or we're doing things that is better for the environment.
Yeah, it's really important, I think, like you just said, that we all do that. You know how some people say that it's difficult for them to do that, and they are trying to do things in an eco-friendly way. Why do you think it's difficult for them?
There's a number of reasons why it might be difficult. It might be difficult because it's not clear what they should be doing. It might be difficult because what they need to do is something they don't fully understand. Yeah. So they know what they need to do, but the thing they need to do, they don't fully understand. So they maybe need help with it. I think sometimes, for example, businesses, to decarbonize, it's going to cost a lot of money. And therefore, sometimes some businesses don't have that money to be able to make that change. And that makes it really challenging, having to find that money to make that change. The only option they had was to go out of business. Then all the people who work in that company would be out of a job. That would be certainly unfair on those employees. So it's about making these changes in the way where we're thinking about everybody in society, making the change as fast as we can, but making it as just or as equal as we can, so that we're not unfairly burdening certain parts of society with the changes we need to make. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. And I think with climate change, buying, metal bottles is definitely more expensive, because of the reasons that you've just listed. And buying plastic bottles, if you're like not very wealthy or you're poor and you're struggling, is a lot easier. But also, when people say that they're trying to make a difference, how can you tell if they are or if they're just not?
I think the most important thing is if they say they've made a difference, that they explain what they've done. So what have they done? What problem have they solved? It's about seeking information, really. So just saying I've done something sustainable, I've done this or that is great, but then tell me what you've done, to explain to me. And so you raise a really important point, I think, in sustainable development, in sustainability, for what people, certainly businesses, are doing. And it's about being transparent and open. So show me what you've done. Why have you done it that way? What are the benefits of it? Certainly in business, if I'm working with another business who's really transparent and open and willing to exchange that information with me and really willing to tell me what they've done and why they've done it, then I start to get more confidence in that organization that I'm working with. And I start to believe that, yeah, you're right. I believe what you're saying here. You've shown me the evidence. You've been transparent. You've reported it to me. And I think that's really important for sustainability, because there are a lot of businesses out there today that are saying, we have the most sustainable products, or we've done a sustainable thing, which might of course be true, but really until those businesses are able to show people what they've done, why they've done it, and what the benefit is, and report it, then you've always got a doubt that, well, is that true or not? Because there are lots of people making these claims out there, as we know. And so transparency in reporting is really important. And I work for Tata Steel, and that's one of the things we try and get right, is to be as open as we can be, and to be as transparent as we can be, and put as much data about what we're doing and what we're trying to improve out there as possible. I think people really value that. They like that kind of openness. So I think probably that's the way to do it, is to understand, not just understand the headline, like we have built a sustainable building, but why is it sustainable? What have you done? There's another benefit as well as understanding what they've really done and being able to appreciate what they've really done. You can learn from it as well. And maybe we can apply those things that they've done to make that building sustainable in other areas as well.
Making sure that people are actually making a difference is really important, because if they aren't, then we're not going to progress. So on a smaller scale, with plastic bottles, why can we not make metal bottles cheaper so that people choose them over the plastic ones? Because some people choose plastic because of convenience. Yeah. You know, it's cheaper and you can throw it away after, and it's enjoyable, you know. So how can we change that?
I guess the thing to think about here is, when you get a plastic bottle, you buy it from the shops and you dispose of it, you throw it away. If you think about doing that more than once, so you do that every day, you're paying for that plastic bottle every time. It would be cheaper over the long run, maybe to have a metal bottle and not have to pay for the plastic bottle every day, and to fill up that water bottle, the same water bottle, metal water bottle, potentially for years and years and years.
If metal bottles were cheaper and plastic bottles were more, or like if they were equal, do you think people would still litter metal bottles?
I think it's really interesting, because I think part of the reason that people throw away plastic bottles is because they're cheap. They're not worth anything. So a plastic bottle worth full of water probably costs £1 or £1.50 in the shops. That's typically what I guess you'd pay. And then when you've emptied that water and you've finished the water, the plastic's worth nothing. So that's why some people throw it in the recycling. Some people will throw it in a bin. Some people will just throw it on the ground. We've seen lots of evidence of that around the world. I guess if that plastic bottle was worth £10 and somebody was going to buy it off you for £10, would you throw it away?
I definitely wouldn't throw it away, because it's
no would I.
Yeah, it's worth more. It's, you know, more valuable. You've paid so much for it. Why would you only want to use it for a short period of time?
So I guess if plastic was worth more, then, because at the moment lots of plastics can be recycled, some plastics can't be recycled. But whether something can be recycled or not, if it can be recycled, it doesn't necessarily mean to say it is going to be recycled. That's one of, I think, the advantages that steel and lots of metals have, is that you can recycle steel. So part of the reason that it's recycled when somebody finishes with the piece of steel is because it's worth something. And because it's worth something, and you've got a bit of steel, you might sell it on to somebody who's going to take it to a steel making factory and put it back in the furnace to make more steel out of it. Yeah. So it's that value in the steel at the end of its life that it means it will be recycled. And I think it's a challenge for materials like plastics, because they're not worth anything. In the stuff we use, it's really important that we try and only use stuff that can be used again and again and again. But we're kind of picking on plastics a little bit here sometimes, because plastics, of course, do have good uses. One example that I can think of is in food packaging. There's it takes a lot of energy and resource to grow food and then package the food and deliver it to people who want to. Food waste is a big problem in our society. People throw away a lot of food, but maybe plastics is a way of maintaining that food for a longer time.
Yeah. So for the people that actually do throw their water bottles away in the recycling properly, does it actually get recycled?
Not necessarily, no. So you can't necessarily guarantee that they're going to be recycled. It's not like steel, where virtually all steel, certainly in construction, is recycled. And the reason that when people take buildings down and they've got a piece of steel, typically that piece of steel might be worth £100 or £150 or something. And so it's really worth them taking that out of the building and taking that to somebody called a scrap merchant, who's a person that collects all this steel or metal together. And it's worth them going to that scrap merchant and selling that steel to them. So for some materials, not many, but for some materials, you can almost guarantee that they will be recycled. But for some materials where it's not economic to recycle, then you can't necessarily guarantee. And I think plastics is one of those, but I must admit I'm not an expert in that particular area.
It's like value dictates whether things get recycled or not, because it's like plastic, like you said, the businesses are benefiting because, you know, their business is running from selling the plastic, but really it just goes like heaps of it into another country, and, you know, it causes harm to so many places, so much wildlife. It goes in the ocean, it's like it goes anywhere, but here we're trying to get it away from us, and it's kind of just destroying the whole world. And so what do you think?
So I'm sure they're doing their best, but you're right, Sienna, our experience shows us when something has little value, lots of people will throw it away or dispose of it in a way that's not responsible. Or even if it's disposed of responsibly, it can end up in landfill. So it ends up taking more land. That waste, we have to put that waste somewhere. And so it ends up taking more land. It ends up taking more natural habitats, wild habitats. So it's really important. Like you said earlier, you're avoiding using single-use plastics. I think the whole world's got to use less stuff.
Yeah, with renewable energy sources, I also think they're really good because they're renewable. You know, you can use them again and again, and we need to stop using so many fossil fuels and one-way plastic and everything like that, because it's just taking and taking and taking from the earth, and we're going to run out because fossil fuels do run out. You know, they do run out eventually. So what's your thoughts on renewable energy?
The thing about renewable energy is, you remember I said right at the beginning, is that, you know, governments need to make change and these things take time. Is we're all going to be wanting renewable energy, lots and lots of renewable energy. So eventually all of us will be using renewable energy in our houses. Yeah. And eventually all of us will have electric cars, or we'll have more sustainable ways of transporting society around and moving society around. And that's going to take an enormous amount of renewable energy. And so it's really important that governments make real commitments to producing and to building, and to allow businesses to invest, to create the right environment for those businesses to invest in all of that renewable energy. So I think, yeah, renewable energy is going to help a lot of society. Decarbonizing the energy we use is a real big thing to do, a massive thing to do. I think I do have a slight fear that, because I think the building of wind turbines and tidal wave machines and other renewable energy methods is going to struggle to keep up with the demand of society. And I think that renewable energy will be in such big demand, but there's not going to be a lot of it around, not enough of it around. So I think one of the key things for me personally is that governments work really hard on investing and getting businesses to invest in more and more renewable energy.
They do. Talking about, you know, reusing things, you know, taking, you know, using what we have with the whole life perspective. So can you explain to me how metal and steel get reused after they've been, you know, recycled?
Sure. It's interesting you use the phrase whole life perspective. So there's maybe some people who are listening to this that don't understand what that means. So just to explain to them, a whole life perspective means that you don't just think about today when you choose to buy some stuff. You just don't think about today. So should we take an example of a water bottle? I know we've used that example a couple of times, but it's probably an easier one to discuss. So if I buy a metal water bottle, then it's taken some steel to make that metal water bottle, maybe some paints on the outside and some packaging. It's taken transport to get to the shops. So I've thought about all that, and I think, right, but I still think it's the right thing to do to buy that water bottle, because it's going to last me a long time. It's going to last me years, tens of years. And when I've finished with it, I know because it's made of steel, I'll put it in the recycling and it'll go to a processing facility where a magnet picks it up, and because magnets pick up steel, and then it's going to go into the recycling bin, and it's going to be recycled. In fact, Tata Steel might even buy that piece of steel to put back in to make more steel. So that's what a whole life perspective is. So I haven't thought about the metal that went into the bottle and getting it to the shops and the transport and everything, the packaging. I've thought about how I might use it and how tough and durable it is. I've thought about what happens when I stop using it. So that's called a whole life perspective. And that's really important for us to do when we're deciding what we're going to buy and what stuff we're going to use, because sometimes the things we do now, it's not terribly clear what might happen tomorrow and in the future. And you might make the wrong decision by just focusing on the now. It's important to try and take that whole life perspective, because it might change your view on what you want to do.
Yeah. So with the whole life perspective, how does that reduce the impact on natural habitats and animals and things? How does that help the animals?
Okay, so we're going to take the bottles example again. So imagine I use a bottle every day, and imagine some of those bottles don't go to proper recycling. They just get thrown into the countryside or thrown into the sea or whatever. So that impacts on natural habitats. So that waste goes into the natural environment and can cause problems. Then even when those bottles are disposed of more responsibly, they maybe end up in a landfill. And you've seen, when you go to plenty of your refuse centres at your local towns, you're seeing plenty of plastic bottles, and we've seen them on pictures in landfill sites. So that again is waste, and that waste has to go somewhere. As we fill the land, we need more landfill. So even when those bottles are disposed of more responsibly, it could mean that we are needing more land to take that waste. And that land is typically habitats and countryside. So I think there is a number of ways where not taking a life cycle perspective can have that impact, and land is where creatures live. So that's certainly a couple of the problems I see on biodiversity with not taking a life cycle perspective.
So taking land is a really big problem, deforestation, things like that. So because obviously we're putting so much carbon into the air, we need the trees, because most of them, take in the carbon and allow oxygen, and a lot of them are just being, cut down completely. Sometimes there's quite big forest fires and things. That wouldn't have such a big impact if we didn't, use so much of the land and cut down so many of the trees to make space for cattle and things so that we can have food, using space for landfill. So how can we make changes so that we use less resources?
If we buy stuff, that stuff needs to be made from something, and typically that takes land to do that. So whether it's buying beef, as you say, from Brazil or somewhere, chopping down the trees to have the cattle farm, or it's something else, then what we need to do is focus on using less stuff. Start thinking about our lives, and start thinking about how we can be more efficient in what we do by buying less things. Thinking about, do I need that stuff? And as I said earlier, if we can use something, if we do have some stuff, making sure we buy the right stuff, it lasts a long time, or can be used again and again and again. And so that's what we're doing in our household, and that's what we try and do in our business, is try and make things as efficiently as we can. We've got big plans to reduce the carbon of the materials we do make, and so we're constantly working on how we can do things better. But as I said, it's complex, it's not easy, so it is a big challenge. It's a big challenge for all of us to completely change our lifestyles or the way we work in business.
Yeah, exactly. You need to make it's important for everyone to make small changes, and sometimes they aren't obvious. It's not easy to see some things because it's not like I don't think it's spoken about quite a lot on the things like the television. Yeah, sometimes it's on the news, like climate change, things that you can do to help, but it's not spoken about as it should be. I think that more people need to be aware of the things they can do, because some people don't know what to do. I think we need to find ways to help them. But if most people start to make those small changes, it's not always easy, like you said. I think that if a lot of people try to make those small changes, then the people that don't care, there's less people that don't care than people that do care, I think. And like you said, the government, businesses, some, things can do bigger changes than just individuals, but all the individuals also make a big change, if that makes sense. It's everyone's part to help. We need to help people help the planet.
Yeah, no, that's really good, Sienna. I completely agree with everything you've said there. Sometimes they're individual small changes, and sometimes they're big changes that businesses can make as well. But it's interesting what you're saying about people not talking about it so much on TV or whatever else. I think you're right that there's more coming, but it's not as much as you might think. We need to talk about it more because some people don't realise. But it's about, people like you talking about it, and people like me and your mum and my colleagues all talking about it. So, it's back to what we said at the beginning, isn't it? So we all learn together, and we start to understand some of the challenges and some of the things we might be able to do.
Tata Steel is one of Europe's largest steel producers and a world leader in sustainable steel. Our strength is not in our size, but our approach to building collaborative relationships across a variety of markets: automotive, packaging and engineering, as well as construction and infrastructure. The Tata Group was founded on the principle that its activities should always benefit society, and Tata Steel is guided by the same long-term vision. Poly Creative use their in-depth knowledge of the construction industry and digital marketing to provide insight, leads, and support the business strategy of their clients. Through our experience of research, strategy, and digital content creation, we know how construction can be a force for good and positive change, and we're excited to put our name to this collaboration.
Thank you for listening to this podcast, brought to you by Tata Steel and Poly Creative. For more information about the topics discussed in this podcast and to contribute to the debate, visit construction-cpd.com/buildfortomorrow.